I think one of my favorite things about Berlin is this is how it's explained it to my families, you can live in a point of history and any point of history in the same city. So you can be walking through the next to the Berlin Wall, parts of the Berlin Wall, and then you can be right next to a museum about the Holocaust, or you can be talking about how the German Empire came. It's such a city. It's a city that has so many connecting histories that at any point you can be in a completely different part of history, and that I think that's one of my favorite things about the city. One of the first meetings that we had was with 𝗔𝗃𝗃𝗧𝗦 during our introduction and all of these, and he mentioned this idea that there is one big liberal script that exists out there. And I remember thinking, I don't agree. I don't think that's true. And so that's actually influenced how I've shaped my question. My questions are very different from what I proposed. And now it's shifted to almost a challenge to prove that there is more than just one liberal script. And I'm using kind of a gender perspective to be able to prove this. And so it's really, through interactions, it's really helped me shape kind of how I'm viewing the world and how I'm viewing the next steps I take on my research. I have always been interested in gender, but not just necessarily gender, but the idea of empowerment and representation. Because of my background, because of the fact that I'm from Puerto Rico and I know what it's like that my island has no representation in the United States. We have disenfranchised and we have a history of colonization. And so because of that, I have become very receptive to questions about empowerment and representation in institutions, in organizations. Regional organizations came into mind because we've always thought of international organizations as these big actors, but in reality, regional organizations have a lot more interaction with the people and go beyond the state as well. They can in some ways control or influence the state. And I chose Latin America because of the same argument that I previously gave, in that Latin America is usually shown as having no agency whatsoever, and I want to show that regional organizations within Latin America have their own agency, and they can influence the inclusion or the oppression of LGBTQ, women, and minorities within the region. For my master's, I did research on Latin America for my master's thesis, and it's also on gender, but it was most specifically on regional organizations in Latin America. And what I noticed through reading the literature was that a lot of the times Latin America itself and organizations in Latin America are not given enough agency. They're usually, in a lot of comparative work, they're assumed as being influenced by the European Union, shaped by the West. In other words, Latin America itself just receives, doesn't give into these conversations. And I think that could lead to the assumption that there is one liberal script if we only see it from the Western perspective. I believe that if you open Latin America and say, what do scholars and philosophers in Latin America say, what do leaders there say, it might actually prove that there are different aspects of the liberal script that we haven't even thought of in our conceptualization on what a liberal script is at the moment. To me, the most important aspect is the ability to interact with so many people of so many different backgrounds and have very different approaches to research. Right now in my office, I am sitting with two doctoral students who do quantitative work, which is beyond me. But it's also, they also, when I discuss my research, they're willing to look at it from a different perspective as well and say, hey, Andrea, maybe this doesn't make sense. Think of it this way. And then I, in some ways, can also help and discuss their own research and say, hey, maybe the numbers don't tell the entire story. And so I think that is the most exciting aspect of this of the entire cluster, and also just how we our viewing, we all think there's this idea of the liberal script, but if you speak to each and every single one of them, they'll have different ideas of what the liberal script is. And so I think that's also one of the most exciting aspects of it.